it's a good book, a fun read, and it also asks an old question. What if? What if I could go back in time? What would I change? Would it be a personal moment in my life? Would I try to save a president like Lincoln or Kennedy? Would I try to keep Steve Bartman from trying to catch a foul ball for the Cubs in 2003? If you're a Cubs fan, you know about what I'm talking about. If I could go back in time. Often when I read the story of Joseph here in Genesis, especially today's passage, I find myself wondering if any of the people in this particular story ever asked themselves that same question. If I could turn back time, wanting to change what's happened to us, especially if it's something bad or if there are consequences that we didn't foresee, it's a very human desire. It's one that all the people in today's passage could ask themselves, be it Israel, also known as Jacob, be it Joseph, or be it Joseph's brother. Yet no matter how much they might want to turn back time, God is still present in everything they do. And that is just as true for us. So start with the easiest one to overlook here. Israel or Jacob. If Israel could have turned back time, I suspect it would be so that he could undo something that he may not have even realized he was doing, playing favorites with Joseph. Remember, Joseph had a different mother than all but one of his 11 brothers for a long time. He was the only child born of Rachel. That was Jacob's favorite wife out of his 4. And that's probably where his favoritism started. But in doing so, the jealousy of the 10 other brothers was kindled, and it eventually grew white hot. It morphed into hatred. And yes, I think that's where Israel would go if he could turn back time, because he could see what jealousy so often does. It starts small, maybe an irritant or an annoyance, but it continues to grow until it can crowd out almost everything good or decent. There's an old story, and there's a number of variations of it, about 2 merchants who were very fierce competitors. Their market stalls in the city were across from each other, and each man would judge his success by one standard alone, whether he did more business than his competitor. And whenever one attracted a customer who made a purchase, he would immediately call out across the street and taunt him. Their rivalry got more and more bitter each year. One day, God sent an angel to one of the merchants. The Lord Almighty has chosen to bestow on you a great gift. Whatever you desire, you will receive. Ask for whatever you like, riches, long life, healthy children. Speak the word, and it is yours. A surprised look came over the merchant's face, and then a very big smile. But then, if you know the story, the angel warns him, there's but one condition. Whatever you receive, your competitor across the street will receive double. If you ask for 100 gold coins, you get 200. If you're famous, you'll be twice as famous. This is God's way of teaching you a lesson, said the angel. The merchant thought, and they said, you'll give me anything I ask. The angel nodded. The man's face got dark, and he said viciously, then I ask you to strike me blind in one eye. There are a lot of variations on that story, but its basic point doesn't change. When we get so consumed with jealousy or hatred or anger, we become willing to hurt ourselves, if it could hurt someone we see as our enemy, even more. Strike me blind in one eye, so my enemy has to be struck blind in 2. If Israel could turn back time, stopping that jealousy would have been the thing to do. And yet the way things played out, it's clear that we need to know the importance of loving everyone, even those that seem unlovable or less lovable. If only Israel could have loved all his sons equally, if only Joseph's brothers could have found room in their heart to love him, how different things would have been. That also makes me wonder about Joseph's brothers. In a sense, it seems asking how the brothers might want to turn back time is the easiest. I mean, turn back time and don't try to kill Joseph. Don't try and sell him into slavery. Simple enough. But what always sticks in my mind is what the brothers do right after they throw Joseph into the well, into that pit, presumably to starve or die of thirst. It's in verse 25, the first sentence after they throw Joseph into the well. We're told, quite simply, they sat down to eat. Think about that. They care so little, they can throw their brother in a well and then sit down and eat. I would want to turn back time for Joseph's brothers to that moment. I want the brothers to care, to feel so badly about what they're doing that they can't eat lunch. What the brothers of Joseph need to do is care about what they've done, not just take a break for lunch. Sometimes what needs to change is something so basic, it's easy to overlook. One of the most interesting things about kids' sporting events is the parents' reaction to their children. Recently, a father was attending his daughter's track meet. And on the fourth and last lap of the boys' mile run, everyone was together that was running the mile for the boys, except for the two front runners who were about 100 yards in front. As the runners came toward the finish line, the crowd began to cheer wildly. You know how parents are at that point. And just then, the dad happened to look all the way over on the backstretch. And there, hopelessly last by half a lap, was a kid who in my day we would have called, shall we say, husky. He should not have been running the mile. His entire body was wobbling towards the finish line. His face was bright red, and it was twisted with that kind of face that only runners who are on their last have. Suddenly, the dad who was watching this race was brushed by a frantic parent leaping down from bleachers, going right up the rail that surrounded the track. It was obviously the boy's mother who was in last place. And she yells at the top of her lungs, "Johnny, run faster!" That dad will never forget the look of hopelessness on Johnny's face. You could almost see him thinking, run faster? Run faster? What am I, an idiot? What do you think is the problem? I forgot that I was supposed to run fast? I'm running as fast as I can. Have we ever felt like Johnny? Here we are worshiping by computer or in a parking lot, for heaven's sake. We're exhausted from a week with contending with all the different storms of life. And what does the sermon say? Run faster, keep focused, love others. And my guess is most of you could go at that point, duh, Ted, we know we're supposed to love others. No kidding. And yet, I need to hear that at times, and I suspect we need to hear that at times. It may be basic, maybe even be the basic starting point of our relationship with God, and we cannot forget it. Just as the brothers of Joseph needed to care enough about Joseph, love Joseph enough, that they couldn't just sit down and eat lunch without a care in the world. We need to have a care in the world for every other person. It's basic, but it's essential. We must care. At least that wasn't Joseph's problem. For Joseph, he has so many possibilities where he could turn back time. He could not tell his brothers his dreams that they would bow down to him. He could simply not find them in Dothan or a whole bunch of other moments throughout his early life. Maybe that's us for Joseph and for us here. Every choice we make matters. Some may not be obvious, but choices matter. All we choose to do, to ask, matters. If Joseph had turned back time, he may have missed the danger points, but then would there have been food for the famine in a few years? Would his family have found welcome in Egypt so many years later? Every choice we make matters, and God is present in every one of them. That's what Joseph would grow to learn. Hopefully, it's what we learn. Really, the same could be said for his father Israel, his brother. God was present in everything that happened here. And while they may have wished to turn back time, and despite slavery, betrayal, and famine, God was there. Ultimately, this is a story of how God works in every time and place. Our job is to trust in God's presence, to love even in the worst of events. It's what Joseph knew. It's what his brothers would learn. It's what we will know. Many of you know how much I admire and like Tony Campolo, the sociologist and preacher. He recalls a time a number of years ago he had the privilege of meeting with 25 survivors from Auschwitz, the Nazi death camp during World War II. Tony recalls that we had breakfast together, and I asked him, after what you went through at the hand of Nazis, how do you react when you hear someone with a German accent today? Survivors were quiet for a moment. So one of the men answered, I was just a boy when they put me along with my family into a cattle car in Troyes, France. Started us on a long journey to Auschwitz. We had no water, we had no food, and each night the train would stop and sit still for hours. And then we'd cross over the border into Germany. And there, every night when we stopped, time and time again, after hours had passed, there would be Germans who would sneak up out of the forest, come up to the side of our cattle car, and between the slats of the car, push a small container of water and bits of food. Their generosity kept me alive. What they did was done at great risk. So when I hear someone with a German accent, the survivor of Auschwitz said, I say to myself, could that be the child or the grandchild of one of those who dared to help me in my time of need? And then I find inevitably that I can smile at them. Campolo finishes by saying that every time he recalls this story, he becomes increasingly more convicted because of all the experiences from which hatred could understandably burn. Auschwitz has to be at the top of the list. And yet, Campolo recalls, you could see that this man did not hate his German brothers and sisters. He chose to see potential love in each German rather than the potential. What if that's how we treated each other today? What if that's how Joseph had treated his brothers, or his brothers had treated Joseph? What if rather than seeing the potential hatred, the instant disagreement, the possible anger, we respond with the potential love, the open and listening ear, the possible compassion of our heart? No, the solution is not in turning back time, no matter how nice that might seem. The solution is seeing and finding love for one another, to have faith in God, no matter what's happening. For that, we never need to turn back time. Amen. And now our next music selection. As I mentioned earlier, we will not be passing plates through the parking lot. That, if we to do that,